This video compiles the list of the over 90 Foundry Virtual Tabletop modules I use in my Dungeons & Dragons campaign. This is the second video in this series, as I'd prefer not to make these videos an hour or more long, and there's just a lot of modules to get through. This is just an overview, not a deep dive, so if you're just looking for the list of modules I use, or you're seeing this video before you've seen part 1, check out the link on screen now or in the description below to check that video out first, and then come back here to continue on. Let me know in the comments if there's any specific modules you'd like me to do a deep dive on, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel to see those and more Foundry tutorials in the future, as well as D&D and other RPG content from me as well. So with that, let's jump into the next one on our list. Elandril's hotbar uses lets you drag, say, a longbow onto your hotbar, and will tell you how many arrows it has left before it runs out of ammo. You can do the same thing with spells and spell slots and monks' key point uses and so on. It's very helpful for your players. Elandril's inventory sorter sorts inventory alphabetically on character sheets. Initiative quick change lets you click on the initiative roll for a token and change it to whatever you want instantly. Kandashi's Fluid Canvas, similar to FX Master, lets you create some special effects such as ground shaking on the map. Koboldworks Ready Up is useful if your players need a reminder that their turn is coming up. It basically fires off a siren that will scare the crap out of them the turn before it's their turn, and then again when it's their turn. Mostly this will enrage you as this module blares horns into your players' heads and they still forget to plan their turn until it actually comes. Let Me Roll That For You basically lets you prompt your players to make a roll of a specific kind. This combines very well with MIDI QOL's automation to force players to make a saving throw if a spell or other effect requires them to. I find this to be a major time saver, as it basically gives them a prompt and they can still add whatever modifiers they want to it. It also has a function so that if they don't make the roll after a certain amount of time, it rolls for them automatically. The next 3 modules are library modules that serve as dependencies for many other modules on this list. Light/sound mask lets you create different shapes out of lights, such as squares, pentagrams, and triangles, and so on. Link item and resource D&D 5e takes those 3 resource blocks your character sheets have access to, you can see them right here, and lets you link them directly with items, such as the rage that you see here on screen. So, for instance, you can link that rage or monk's key points so that the key points are a bit easier to keep track of. This could be pretty useful if you are really going all out to get the most out of it, but for my money, it's been kind of a distraction if you're not. Lordu's custom dice for Dice So Nice basically adds a bunch of extra dice skins to the Dice So Nice module. Magic items basically lets you add spells to items, which will then pass those spells off to the token carrying the item. It will separate those spells from the normal spells the token already has, which is very useful. It's a little finicky and hasn't been updated for months, but while it still works, it is a very nice module. Merchant Sheet NPC basically lets you turn character tokens into an automated store your players can go through and sell things to and purchase things from. MIDI QOL is a massive module that I would never be able to do justice to in just this little video. The primary use of it, in my opinion, is to add an enormous amount of automation to your game, especially during combat. It will let you target a token, and when you roll an attack, it will automatically roll the attack and the damage together, look at your attack roll, compare it to your target's armor class, and if it hits, it will automatically apply your damage to the target. It has an enormous amount of customization and is probably the most ambitious and elaborate module in this list. But it does require you to configure to your liking, which requires a decent amount of effort to learn how it works and experiment with to get it really just how you like it. It also requires several other modules to get the most out of it. If you don't really like the idea of automating much of your game, this probably could be skipped easily, but I gotta tell you, this module has saved me so much time and also plays really well with some visual effects modules that it just creates amazing effects and is a really big benefit to at least my campaign. Minimal UI basically removes the Foundry logo, shrinks a lot of the UI elements. It basically is a lot nicer overall. It also lets you configure various aspects of the UI, which is nice. Module Management Plus helps you manage your module list with all these little icons you see on the screen, which can alert you to incompatibilities, and even contains the links directly to the GitHubs of the modules. Monk's active tile triggers lets you set up various triggers that will cause tiles to do things such as turn invisible or visible, or they'll pause the game or play a sound or teleport a token, roll on a roll table, and so on. This is a very nice module for anyone who has the time to really play around with it. So far, I have not had that kind of time, but I have modules that use it, which is why I have it active right now. Monk's common display lets you sync the DM screen to the players so that you can move your players' maps around automatically as you move your own. It also lets you force other screens to select tokens that you select. Monk's hotbar expansion basically lets you reveal all 5 rows of your hotbar at once, like so, and move things around from one row to another. It's very useful for DMs and players who use more than one row of their hotbar. Monk's Little Details is another module that really needs its own video to delve deep into it. It does a ton of stuff, a lot of which you'll never use, but you can turn it off, so it's super configurable. It can automatically set new tokens to defeated when they reach 0 HP, display a CR calculation based on who's in initiative, show status icon names to help you pick the right one, or clear them all with a single button click. You can also give NPC sound effects, change the scene compendium appearance, show the top 5 most used colors for a map to help you pick a good background color for a map, drag wall points together, teleport tokens around a map, turn a token into a blood splat when they die, and really a whole lot more. Like I said, it really needs a video of its own to go through all of this stuff in more detail. Monk's Token Bar adds a bar that shows all PC tokens and any other tokens you set up for it, giving certain information about them, which you can configure, such as armor class, passive perception, HP, exhaustion level, if they have inspiration, and so on. You can see this bar right here. You can also stop them from moving their token during combat mode unless it's their turn, and request specific roles from specific players, which you can fully set up yourself. You can also click on their portrait and have the map snap over to them. Monk's Wall Enhancement adds a bunch of quality of life features to drawing walls, such as letting 2 separate walls that are joined together to move with each other by dragging one of them, where by default they'd unsnap from each other and only the one you've grabbed will move, making drawing walls around your map take 10 times longer. Multi-face tiles is great for setting up traps. Basically, it lets you take a tile and set up multiple images for it, which you can swap to at a click of a button. So you could have a blank floor tile turn into a spike trap, for instance. Navigation name lets the DM see the scene name for a map while the players continue to see the navigation name. So for instance, I might want to set the name of a map as OMG Super Trap Map, and my players will see the name of the map as Definitely Not a Trap Map. Overhead tile fade for all tokens basically changes the default behavior of roofs so that when a player token goes beneath the roof doesn't just fade for that player, but for all of the players. Pings really should be a Foundry default, and I believe it will be in version 10. It basically lets players ping the map like that, so players can see what each other are pointing to. Quick Module Enable prompts you to activate a module you just downloaded. Very useful for anyone installing a lot of new modules. Quick Scale lets you change the scaling of a token with a single button press instead of having to open up a character's properties, tabbing over to appearance, manually adjusting the slider to some level, hitting update token, seeing if that looks good, and if it doesn't, having to go back in and do it all over again. Much simpler with just the single button press. Scene Defaults lets you set up some defaults for scenes so that you don't have to adjust all maps the same way over and over again. For instance, I don't use a grid in my game, so I set up my scenes to be gridless by default. The next 3 modules are just more dependencies for other modules. Splatter is a neat little module that lets your tokens drip blood as they move when they drop below 50% health. It has a lot of incompatibility issues with other modules, and I've seen it go months at a time without being fixed, but when it works, it's a very nice cosmetic boost to your campaign. Status icon counters basically lets you set up counters on your status icons so you can keep track of how many levels and effect they might have, or you can set it up to count down every round until it expires. So if someone is blessed for 1 minute, you can set it to count down over 10 rounds. There are other modules that do this with more automation and less clunkily, but those tend to require you to set them up ahead of time. This is a nice backup for things that occur spur of the moment. Status icon tweaks lets you change where status icons show up. So instead of showing up in the top corner of a token, you can have them show up above or to the left or right of a token or halfway in between. Tagger lets you set up tags for objects and tokens, which macros and other modules can then call to. Target reacts when combined with MIDI quality of life will cause a token to shake a bit when they're hit with an attack. Temporary effects as token statuses lets you delete active effects from the token HUD, where normally the only way to do so would be to do it from the items tab, which would basically require you to drag the item to the items tab from the token, delete the item on the token, fix the item in the items tag, and then redrag the item back to the token, which in the case of a lot of items would require you to go back into the item and re-equip it and reattune to it and so on. This is a very nice quality of life upgrade. Tidy 5e sheet adds all kinds of quality of life updates to character sheets, most importantly a dark mode, but all kinds of nice effects like being able to lock a character sheet from making accidental changes to it. This module really deserves a video of its own to deep dive into it. Time's Up is mostly a module dependency for other modules. It helps keep track of time in Foundry. It's useful for me for Defred's convenient effects to keep track of how long certain effects should stay active for, but you can use this module for so much more, including things like calendars and such. Token Attacher is a dependency for the Mount Up module, although it can do certain similar things on its own. Token HUD Wildcard basically lets you swap token images out for one another on the fly. Token Magic FX adds all kinds of effects to tokens and templates and can make your tokens appear to be floating or appear to be on fire or glowing or a ton of other stuff. Token Z lets you manually configure the Z axis of tokens, keeping certain tokens always above or below others. Variant Encumbrance plus MIDI basically adds the variant encumbrance rules to your game and lets you modify some of this stuff. Wall height basically makes it possible to see over walls if you are above it, or under them if you are under them. This module also lets you set up the heights of your characters, giving them the natural ability to see above or below certain walls. Warp Gate, for my purposes anyway, is mostly just a dependency for other modules I use, but I believe it can be used as a fully functional module in its own right. Weather Blocker lets you draw an area where weather effects such as rain or snow won't be able to enter. This is useful if you want it to be raining in an outdoor portion of the map only, but not inside a building, for instance. Wild Magic Surge 5e basically automates Wild Magic Surge effects, rolling a d20 automatically every time a Wild Magic Sorcerer casts a spell, and if they roll a natural 1, it automatically rolls on a Wild Magic Surge roll table, letting you know what the status effect is. World Currency 5e lets you deactivate certain currencies and lets you change the names of currencies. Zoom/pan options is another thing that should be default to Foundry, as if this module didn't exist, I probably would be so frustrated with my default user experience of Foundry that I just wouldn't bother with Foundry at all, and I'm not even joking. By default, when you scroll in or scroll out, Foundry does so to the center of your screen. So if you want to zoom in on an area, you have to try to place that area dead center of your screen and zoom in on it. If you get it wrong, then you have to pan around a bunch. If you're zoomed in on the map and want to go to the far end of the map, you either have to pan to the other side or zoom out, pan to try and place the area dead center on your map, zoom in, and then pan to adjust. With this module, it has the game zoom in and out based on where your mouse is pointed. So right now, I'm zoomed in on an area, and if I want to go to the other side of the map, I simply zoom out, put my mouse over there, and zoom in. Boom, done. This module also lets you zoom in far further than Foundry will let you do by default, as you can see right there. Finally, we have Z-Sync. By default, if two tokens are overlapping and you click on the bottom one, that token will jump on top of the other token, but only on your screen. Z-Sync keeps everyone synced together so that you know if a token is on top of another. That's how it's going to look for all of the players connected. And that's it. I think we ran through 90 modules. Like I said at the start, if you want me to go through some of these modules more in depth or review other modules, let me know and mention which ones you're interested in. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and smash the like button or whatever. I'll see you all next time.